Hey, welcome back everyone. There's an organization under the Chinese Communist Party that's running money laundering operations tied to the Mexican drug cartels, tied to organized crime, murder, the drug trade, you name it, working closely with different government officials and networks of corruption. And this organization is apparently using Canada as its main focus to launder money for cartels for the American drug trade. Here to talk to us about this is Sam Cooper. He's the author of the book Wilful Blindness. Hey, Sam Cooper, great to have you on Crossroads.
Thanks for having me.
So, yeah, Sam, you've done some really interesting research. I read your book, and it's interesting to find another researcher who's kind of followed a similar path of investigation that I've followed, looking into the United Front Work Department. But of course, you're looking at the Canadian side of it. I've looked a lot at the New York tri-state area side of it. And I want to talk to you first about kind of how you uncovered this network. You were investigating like crime, and you stumbled on this. How did that happen?
It really was stumbled onto it is the right word. I mean, like you, I made assessments and findings that I later found would be the same findings that North American Western intelligence has in sort of these classified reports. But I really started by looking at very strange real estate activity in the city of Vancouver on Canada's west coast. I'd say after 2010, I was really looking at how tycoons that were, very murky backgrounds, we knew they were from mainland China, or I discovered that, and yet they didn't want to disclose, anything about their finances, where the money was coming from, indeed how it got into Canada. So eventually I started to find out who some of these names were that were making the biggest real estate acquisitions, land assemblies, developments on the West Coast. And I tied them to underground banking and casino activity. Fast forward a number of years up to 2017, I broke what's known as the e-pirate or Vancouver model story. And this was about how this incredible underground banking of drug cash that's ultimately sourced from fentanyl that's coming in from Wuhan or heroin from the Golden Triangle of Myanmar that's being sent into North America, the proceeds collected by drug gangs, and then cash loaned out to casino gamblers who, of course, were flying in from Macau and mainland China. And then this wealth was cycling into real estate. So I figured out the mystery of what was moving these massive real estate purchases in Vancouver, who some of these developers were, and I'm shocked to this day that I ultimately found out that almost all of these tycoons I had been chasing for years could be tied into casino activity and this cash lending of the Vancouver model. That's what I discovered. And really, at the end of the day, finally, I discovered that some of these people, indeed, the most prolific, could be connected to Chinese state activity, what's known as the United Front.
So, Sam, what you uncovered was pretty heavy. Basically, you, of course, found the Chinese mafia working hand in hand with Mexican drug cartels, working hand in hand with some of the corrupt elements in the Canadian casino industry, tied in with government corruption, tied in with Chinese officials and Chinese spy operations. You're kind of like at that nice little apex of every type of like organized crime and dark activity you could probably encounter. I mean, I'm curious. I mean, first of all, how are you still with us? And second, I mean, what's this experience been like finding this whole thing and writing a book about it on that note?
Well, I think you hit it on the head. I mean, what I stumbled in and discovered was first of all, the real estate wealth I was seeing on the West Coast, the primary source of revenue driver really in Canadian government casinos was tied not only to gang activity, but specifically to this Vancouver model, which I discovered was, of course, allowed to grow out of China because some of the most prolific cash movers and facilitators are narcotics traffickers and casino operators, casino junket facilitators that, as people in Western intelligence know, are protected by the Chinese state in some instances because they're fulfilling the objectives of the Chinese state. If they don't fulfill the objectives, they'll be out of business very fast, and some of them have been put out of business. So this is state-sponsored crime. It's gang activity financial activity at the very highest levels. We're talking about how does oil, secretly get into North Korea? It gets into North Korea through networks that are the very same networks I discovered in Western Canada involved in this casino activity, at the edges involved in, espionage activity, political influence activity, indeed involved in anti-democratic activity in Hong Kong. And I discovered, inklings of that same activity growing in cities like Vancouver and Toronto. So you ask me, how am I still here pursuing this? Look, as you know, it takes some focus. It doesn't hurt to help. It doesn't hurt to have some friends that not only give you great source information, but if I'm in trouble, I know there are people in certain agencies I can call, and it'll be very warranted. If threats come out, certainly the people that are threatening a reporter like yourself or myself, I think they can expect a knock on the door from people in agencies in the United States.
Let's kind of step it back a bit and kind of approach this from the beginning for our audience, but. First, what is this Vancouver model? You mentioned this a few times. How would you describe the Vancouver model?
So the Vancouver model, I've described it as incredibly complex in some ways, but also incredibly simple. This is the way that incredible wealth is moved out of mainland China. Most everyone knows that each citizen on the mainland has a $50,000 capital export limit. Very difficult to get money out in legitimate channels. But we also know that the highest concentration of wealth is in the elite Chinese Communist Party families. And these families have very direct connections to underground banking networks. And so the Vancouver model, the easiest way is to walk you through. Let's say I'm an official in Wuhan. I want to get 1 million into Vancouver to put a down payment on a condo and perhaps some funds for my child to attend a Vancouver private school. I make a connection with a loan shark, a gangster in Vancouver. I probably make that connection in a Macau casino because the Vancouver gangster visits Macau, sees these Chinese officials gambling and says, visit us in Vancouver, we can get your money out. They make a deal. The official travels to Vancouver, meets the gangster in a parking lot, literally, maybe in 2 trips, gets 2 bags of cash, $500,000, could be a common transaction in a duffel bag, cash. This is drug cash. And the official gambles very easily in a government casino. And then they pay back the debt in China from their bank account into the gangster's bank account, let's say in Wuhan or Shandong. The proceeds, of course, then fund, more fentanyl precursor production in Wuhan, which sends more drugs into the United States or Canada, produces more drug cash, and the cycle repeats. It's loaned out again by these gangsters at the casino to fund the gambling of these Chinese officials flying into Canada.